Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. I've been running for a few years now and have the privilege of meeting many incredible runners on my travels all across the country. This podcast is intended to share those amazing conversations. And welcome back. I have Hillary Allen joining me today. Hillary, thanks so much for hopping on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
For sure. So where in the world are you today?
Today I am, that's a good question. It's like, where's Waldo, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Except without the red striped shirt, I have the red hair. So I'm in this town. It's called Gaudissart. It's in France. I think the population of Gaudissart is like 25. But technically, and we're all like scattered along different hillsides. But on the map, the closest one is Milan-Reval, or the other one is Barcelonnette. So this is all in France, Southern Alps.
Very cool. So before we dive too far into it, who is Hillary Allen?
Oh my God. Actually, this is an interesting question because this is something that I've had to answer numerous times over the course of my life. And most recently, after several injuries, like who am I? Like, what is it that makes me me? And it's a lot of it has been tied to the fact of being an athlete, but really when I had that all like taken away, I'd had to really evaluate who I am and who I was. So it's funny. I think at my core, I describe myself as just a super curious science nerd. I think if I picture me, I picture just this little girl carrying her super bright orange bug net, and I'm just like constantly like looking around for bugs and like asking the question, why? Like, I think at my core, that's who I am. Yeah.
Cool. So that exploration of why is what I love so much. And it's sort of why I started this podcast. And for me, the question of why it surrounds running, and it surrounds like why we do these things. And you've run some really long races and really tough races and have had some like wild experiences in those races. And so I want to dig into that, and I'll back up and sort of explain where this all came from. So a friend of yours actually piqued my interest in doing this as a podcast versus just over dinner or breakfast or coffee or whatever. I was running with Zach Miller at the Manitou Incline.
Oh, Zach!
Yes. And so he did the incline like 2.5 times in the amount of time that it took me to do it once. And then we ran down, and then we got dinner. And I asked him, I was like, why do you train like this? Why do you race so hard? And he just talked for 10 minutes. And I was like, oh my God, I need to record this. Like, this is gold.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, the idea for the podcast was born. And yeah, it's born out of that same exploration or same desire to ask why.
Oh my gosh. I love that so much with Zach, because like literally everyone thinks that he's this like shy guy, but like you get him talking about running or just something that he's passionate about, and he will just go. I've learned, oh my God, I've had so many great conversations with him. And oh man, yeah, I could just imagine the conversation. It's like you just want to like press record on your phone.
Yeah, it was like that. And I went back and I was like, oh man, I wish I did record this, because I mean, it was such a fascinating response. But enough about Zach. Let's move on to you. So before we get too far, along in the conversation, I want to know, what's your why? Why do you do it?
Yeah, that's actually, I've had to examine that question more times than I'd like to admit. just through like different setbacks and injuries and like when things weren't going right, or I wasn't happy, or, whether that's like a good, dealing with injuries or dealing with like a bad result in a race, or just like, just like a low in kind of life or training. I've had to ask myself why. And for me, it is a complicated answer, but the simplest reason for why I run and why I train is because it makes me a better version of myself. And without it, I just feel like I was made to do it. And I feel like it's a passion. It's part of me. And that's like, I think that's just movement, but like part of me is being outside, feeling small in nature, and pushing boundaries, like physical boundaries, just allow me to get the most out of life and the most out of myself. And that's how I want to live.
I love that. And that's like half the reason why I run. And it's that exploration of like what's possible and what can we do. And I was talking about it with a friend yesterday, and I was sort of like reflecting on how what is now like a normal average week is used to be like my peak week. And that's just like what happens. And it's just, like, it's a level up. And what used to be a fast mile is now your easy pace. And it's just so cool how consistency allows us to just get better.
Yeah.
So why did you go for your first run? Or do you remember your first run?
I do. So I grew up in a running family. Actually, my father he was a really, really good runner. In fact, he's like 75 now. So he, 55 years ago, he was running like a 2:28 marathon. He ran for the British national team. So he was like a 2:28 marathon like 55 years ago. It's pretty dang fast. But so running was in my family. We're always really active, always hiking. I think I like learned to walk on a trail, honestly. And my sister was super good at running, and I kind of just started running. It was kind of funny in this elementary school thing. It's called the Cruisers, because it was like Cruise Elementary School. And I remember this run, and I remember I like probably couldn't run a mile. Like it was so hard. Like I just didn't like it. It felt like jolting. I was used to running for like a ball or like to search for bugs or something like this, but I was never like running just to run. I kind of didn't see the point of it. And I was running to stay in shape for sports, but I actually kind of hated it. I remember that first run, I was like, why am I doing this? Like, we're supposed to run for like punishment, for conditioning. And yeah, but then once I really first started running was it actually in graduate school. I like needed some stress relief. And then pretty quickly, I really like to talk. And then I would just like literally an hour would fly by because I was just like talking the whole time to these like 50-year-old ladies who would let me run with them at 5:30 in the morning.
And how did that progress into running mountain ultras and sky running and everything that you're doing now?
Yeah. Honestly, I just happened randomly to join this running club because it was really close to where I lived. It met early enough in the day because I was in graduate school at that time. And so I had to start working in lab at sometimes 7:30 in the morning. I had class every day at 8 that first year. And I was in Denver, Colorado. And so I needed to run super early. I wasn't sure how long I'd be working in lab or if I'd be able to run after work. So I found this running club, it met like 3 days a week. And it was with these like 55-year-old ladies. And they so happened to be like in the 80s, like Olympic trial marathoners running for Team Reebok. And they just took me under their wing. And in that club, it was led by this woman named Janie Day Lucor. But she was a record holder on the Pikes Peak Ascent and the Mount Washington Ascent, these like notorious like trail races across the US. And she kind of introduced me to the idea of, okay, you could run trails. And then I remember I was like this baby bird. She was like letting free, like that first trail run she took me on. I was like, I don't know what this is. And I remember she had me go with her and our friend Lisa Mills. And she was like, okay, Hillary, like Lisa again was like 50 something years old, like super strong woman. And she told me, she's like, okay, Hillary, everyone gets beat by Lisa. Like we'll just let her do her thing and she'll wait for us at the top and then we'll all come down together. And I like started running and I was with Lisa the whole way. And I guess Lisa was like trying to speed up and like drop me, but I was just like, talking and like, this is so fun. And then after that, Janie was like, whoa, okay, like you have a knack for this. And then it just kind of, honestly, it just like took off from there. I learned as much as I could from Janie. And then, I like, kind of accidentally signed up for my first trail race.
I think that's an awesome entry, and it's led you to some pretty incredible places all over the world. What are some of your favorite places that you've run?
Yeah, so I have like a huge, I just love to travel. It's like how I grew up. Like we grew up camping across the United States as a family. And so honestly, some of my favorite places have actually been in the US. Like we have such a vast amount of like the state parks and, wild places and open like wild forest land that we can run through. One of my favorite, I did Trans Zion. So just running across Zion National Park, which is like, it was like 53 miles. It was just so incredibly beautiful. I've run in Yosemite. I've run in Grand Canyon. That place is always spectacular.
Yeah.
Alaska, like that's been, oh man. But like, I mean, like every place you run, like right now I'm in the Alps in France. And I mean, I love it here. The rock is so different. Every trail you go on is just different. I mean, back in the US, like the San Juan Mountains in Colorado, holy crap, like those are insane. The Pyrenees in Spain I've run in, like an island in the Canary Islands off the coast of Morocco. I ran on a volcano. I ran in Greece, like on Mount Olympus. Like we're literally like, it's called Mytikeas. It's called Zeus's throne. Like it's two mountains that make this little like notch, and it's like Zeus used to sit on there and like throw lightning bolts down at like Litohoro, which is this little town like by the ocean. Like I'm not even kidding you. It's like the birth of Greek mythology, and I got to run on that freaking mountain. Like it was insane. But so like stuff like that, I got to run in this race in France where like there was Hannibal. He usually took elephants and crossed the Alps. Like literally, they had found some like elephant bone remains on this pass, like from France into Italy. Like this is near Venois in France. Like. Like I could go on and on and on. Like every place is like my favorite, but it's like there's just a culture like everywhere you go, there's just like this rich history that if you just kind of like look into it, it's amazing. And it's so cool to be able to explore a place by your own 2 feet. Because I feel like that's how humans were made to explore this world. So yeah, I just love it.
So you live the mantra of your sponsor, never stop exploring, to say the least. You literally never stop exploring.
Yeah, because even like, and that's what's even really cool. It's like, even if you're forced to like explore, even if you can't travel, like, I mean, I feel like I'm incredibly lucky to be able to have the opportunity to race across the world. But I think, I mean, I just relish every moment because I just want to explore every like inch of this world. But then also like when I am at home in Colorado, like I can still, even my home trails, like in Boulder, I can still like explore those like intricately. Like, like every rock is different. Even if I run on the same trail every single day, I'm going to experience it differently every time. And I think like that's the coolest part. I think exploration is just a matter of perspective, and you can do it in a completely new place to you or a completely, like normal routine, like, like, yeah, daily, like, daily place that you go every day. So
for sure. I'm glad you mentioned Boulder, because the remote podcasting I've been doing has limited the amount of Boulder hype I'm able to give. I've done probably a dozen podcasts with athletes in Boulder, and for a while this was a Boulder tourism podcast, it seemed. So I'm glad we can talk about that. But let's talk about the run we went on in Boulder.
Yeah.
Last May. So where were we running?
We ran on Sanitas, and then where did we go? We actually, it's funny, like we went on this loop that I'd like never looped up before. And I, like I live and I was running in Boulder like every day, and I never got on this loop before. We had like a mix of pavement running through a neighborhood, and then running on like a steep rocky trail, and, a nice like, smooth descent trail. But yeah, it was around Sanitas area, kind of like North Boulder-ish.
So what I remember about it was there was one stretch that you said you had run quite a lot, and it was where you did all of your running as you were getting back from injury. So it seemed like it had like a lot of it meant a lot to you to be running in that area. So let's talk about that return to running. First, let's back up. So a couple years ago, you had a bit of a fall. Do you want to talk about that? What that was like for those that don't know?
Yeah. So, I do remember that that section. So basically on Sanitas Mountain, it's this like pretty steep trail in Boulder. There's this fire road that's, it's not technical. It's just like a pretty steep road. And this is where I had spent more than one season literally learning how to run again. Because in 2017, I had this crazy accident where I fell off of a cliff. Literally, I wish I was joking, but I'm not. It was like a 50 meter fall. So 150 feet. Or basically tomahawked off this mountain where, a rock gave way when I was running. It was a race in Tromsø, Norway. And so, I mean, I'm kind of saying this matter of factly, like, I mean, it did happen, but like, it was, one of these moments where I had no idea if I was going to be able to run again. And at this point I was, a sponsored runner. And my career as an elite athlete was potentially over. And not only a career is like from competing, but also just like my lifestyle as an athlete was like maybe over. And I mean, it was a pretty severe injuries. I broke in total at 14 bones, if you count all of them. My back and, both arms. I twisted my ankles severely. And I popped a major ligament in my foot, which was like, I remember the doctor saying like, this is a foot changing injury. Like you might be able to jog recreationally, but running is pretty off the table. So like the recovery from that was just mind blowing. Like it's the hardest recovery. Like before this point, I'd never broken a bone. And so, I just did it all at once. And, I literally couldn't walk for 3 months. I was in a boot and like non-weight bearing. And, I literally had to learn to walk again. And then I literally had to learn to run again. And so I had to ask myself that why of like why I wanted to try to rehab, why I wanted to keep pushing myself, and why I wanted to try to return to running, why I loved it or needed it or wanted it so much. And that road, that fire road on Sanitas Mountain is like where I took my first steps, running steps, after that crazy injury. And then a year and a half later, I broke my ankle and I had to learn how to walk and run again. And it was that Sanitas road that I learned how to run again. So yeah, it's pretty special.
I imagine that there was a lot of physical therapy that went into that recovery process, but was there mental therapy that went into it too?
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean,
What was that like?
Obviously I went to a physical therapist. I had some really good physical therapists, in Boulder. It was Revo Sports, Sports Performance Center. And I mean, I think Matt Smith is who I worked with, and he was like literally, he was like my guru. Like, I mean, I could cry to him. I think he like doubled as a therapist and a physical therapist. But honestly, it was just like, it's just the ups and downs of recovery. Like my coach, Adam St. Pierre, like he was, he would listen to me cry. He would listen to my fears. He would listen to, the hard times, the hard moments, the feelings that I like wanted to give up. And, but he would never give up on me. He always was like a solid, belief system and like encouraging me to move forward. My friend, like Alan Lim, like I remember he's the founder of Scratch Labs, but also just a really good friend of mine. He encouraged me to write affirmations and to he taught me to be a positive influence for myself and to be my own biggest supporter. And I think that's like, even now, that's still sometimes hard to do because, life never gets easier. But yes, I think the mental recovery is still the hardest piece. And not to mention like coming back from an injury and wanting to run again and wanting to run steep mountain, like technical terrain, you have to be mentally, I was afraid for a really long time to run. And I was afraid to push myself again and to come back and to run on like technical, scary terrain again, to put myself in like, a high altitude, like exposed environment. We talked about Zach Miller earlier, and Zach was he's a really good friend of mine. He was someone I really trusted, and he was one of the first people that I went out with and on Pikes Peak and went on some like exposed boulder terrain and like a ridge line. And it was really methodical how I had to kind of get back to running physically, but also just like mentally. And even now, I still struggle with mentally, like, not feeling like I was before the accident. But I think the main difference is like, I've just accepted that it's okay to not feel 100% all the time. And that's normal. And it's okay to kind of like give myself a break. And if I'm feeling like today's not the day to run this route, like it's okay. Like the mountains will be there tomorrow, and I can find something else to do. So like, just respecting the power that like emotional and mental health has in your life as an athlete, and also just your daily life in general.
I think that's a really good takeaway for the weird scenario we're in today, that it's okay to not feel okay. And we were talking before we started recording that we're having some good days and we're having some bad days, and that's part of the process. And it's true in running, it's true in life, it's true in relationships, it's true in everything. And I think that's like the beauty of it, that like the highs wouldn't be as high without the lows. And we're in some pretty low lows at the moment, but
yeah.
Just think of the highs that are ahead.
I love that too, because it's not like, but for sure. I learned this. It's like, I used to be afraid of like failure, or used to be afraid of, doing something wrong, or, but I've realized it's like through failure, through these hard moments is like where I learn the most. And just because it's hard does not mean that it's bad. And just because it's hard probably actually means that it's worthwhile. And it's like, you don't appreciate the sunrises unless you have like the sunsets and like the nighttime to like appreciate like the contrast in this world. It's like, you can't appreciate spring unless you have, winter. So, I
Right.
think you're right. It like comes with those, it's the opposites that like, that kind of balance everything. And it's honestly, it's weird because like right now, with the pandemic that's going on, it's like it almost weirdly feels reminiscent of an injury period for me, which like makes me feel kind of bummed. So yeah, like you said, it's like, it's okay to feel that way. Like it's pretty normal, but it's like, I think what's weird about it is that instead of an injury where it's just me experienced injury and all my other friends are out running, it's like everyone is kind of experiencing the same low together, even though we're all separate. We're all like united by this like global suckiness. So it kind of is weirdly unifying.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting in that people are sort of like cutting the bullshit small talk and like skipping to like meaningful interactions versus oh, hey, how are you doing? Oh, I'm good. Oh, great. See you later. We don't have the loose interactions, and I think people are realizing how valuable those were. Talking to somebody in line or like at the grocery store or whatever. And now we're not doing that, and we still crave connection, and we have to be intentional with it now.
Yeah, absolutely.
How have you shifted your routine based on everything that's going on, and what are you looking forward to in the coming year?
So yeah, I mean, it's actually, I experienced this like kind of this huge letdown because like I felt like I was finally not injured and I was like ready to do these like crazy big races. And ironically, through my injuries, I found gravel biking. So I was like excited to do some gravel bike races this spring into summer. And then a big goal race for this year is UTMB. But again, we don't really know if that's happening. But even without with all those uncertainties kind of in the racing schedule and stuff, like it brings me back to that why I run. And like I said, it makes me the best version of myself. And I could train for a race, but honestly, if I really examine why I run, I don't run to race. I run for myself. I run to explore. I run to experience a new place, learn about the history, search for new bugs or animals. Like I run for that, and I can still do that. I don't need a race to do that. I don't need a race to get me out the door. And, races will come back, and it's a cool thing just to have little different goals. And so maybe I'm not running super long miles. Like I don't need to run like crazy long runs because I don't have like really a goal race to train for. But, maybe that'll look differently if I'm excited to go kind of like once, it's safer for us to kind of go outside and do bigger routes. Like maybe I'll just do that just because I'm curious about like where this trail goes. But that's reason enough for me to kind of push myself and explore. So I think my goals have shifted to just pure exploration, which is like kind of exciting because that's why I love to run in the first place. Maybe that'll mean FKTs or just like, run explorations, run bike explorations. But even if I'm not training for a big race or running big miles right now, little routes are fun too. It's like, okay, like when I run today, how's it going to feel? Like, how am I going to search for, if I'm going to find a deer, or am I going to, I don't know, find some cool, like frozen ice pattern on the trail, dirt. I literally, what did that the other day? Like, it's like, it's just, I mean, I think it's all about a matter of perspective. So I think like right now we just have to shift our perspective to think smaller and to focus on, exploration, or like goals don't have to be like these huge grand things that are like far, far away in a foreign country land. They can be pretty close to home and they can be quite satisfying. But yeah, that's honestly like how my perspective and goals have shifted now. And it's creating actually a pretty fun, adventure hour every time I get out to run. So
for sure. Let's talk about the running community. What does the trail community mean to you?
Oh man. It's the best. I feel like it's like I've met some of my best friends through the trail running community, or just like the outdoor community in general. I just feel like we have this maybe like shared, maybe it's like a masochistic view of the world because we all like to suffer, but like I actually don't think that. I think it's like we all just like to challenge ourselves, and it's like if you share miles with someone over a run, it's like you just have this bond because like you all are kind of working towards something together. You all kind of get it, like this crazy thing that we love called like running and endurance sports, and it's just unified in this like strange, quirky way. And I don't know, I just think I love it just because we're all a bunch of nerds at our core, and like yeah, and running's not glamorous like at all. I mean, you're like throwing snot rockets all the time. You're like sweating and breathing hard and like, I don't know, but it's like a beautiful mess. And I love that. Like, it's just so raw. And I love that because it like brings out the rawness in everyone, and you get to learn so much about these people that you run with. So I feel like it's just like, it's, I've like found my quirky people that I belong with, and I have a special relationship because it's like, I mean, I'm an introvert. I mean, I love to talk to people and love to meet new people, but I recharge like by myself. But in times of injury and times of where I feel the most isolated, the running community has been there for me. Through all of my injuries, like it was insane the amount of support that I got from people that I didn't even know, just like wishing me well, saying that, I helped inspire them go through a tough injury, just reaching out to me just to like send me a nice message, wish me well, or, to back home in Boulder where, I came home after all my injuries, and my friends opened up their house to me because I couldn't live in my other house. Like they opened up their guest room on the first floor, so I didn't have to navigate stairs in the scooter. They then like for my birthday party, like the whole running community of Rocky Mountain runners, and like, not just that club, that's like pretty big club in Boulder, but like a whole bunch of other people in the running community showed up, and just like, they just came there. And, like I said, it just feels like, you have this special bond with another runner, and it just kind of doesn't even matter if you have known them your whole life or you've known them for 5 minutes. It's just like, they feel like your people.
Definitely. So you're part of the North Face team, and I think you guys have a really quirky group of athletes, and it seems like everybody's, everyone's best friend. What is that dynamic like, and how has that evolved over the years?
Oh yeah. I mean, the North Face is definitely like that. And what I love about not only just the run team, it's like, what I love about it is we have this athlete summit every year where all of the athletes across all teams and countries come together. So we have the climbers, we have the alpinists, we have, the big mountain, like free riders, like it's insane. Like we have like, just like all of these crazy athletes coming together, once a year. I mean, and it's more than once a year. Once a year we have like most everyone together in one space. We also just have like kind of little like team meetings throughout the year that we can mix and match who gets to come. But I think what it does for the North Face is just, it's so inspiring to be with like-minded people, but then everyone's so curious, and everyone just like loves the outdoors and is just super excited to like push themselves and, find their boundaries and like, the boundaries of what's possible in their respective sports. And it's just, it just gets you super psyched. And then also just like, you just feel like this like warm bear hug every time you're around all these people that are just like badasses. But cool. No, I felt like really lucky to be a part of that team. And even like throughout all of the injury stuff, it's like, North Face has always supported me and like been, 100% there.
One of the things I thought was really cool was when you went to Rob's camp, Rob Krar's camp, and you were both coming back from injury, and the photo of you two in your respective injury recovery tools was a sight to see.
I know.
What was that experience like?
Oh man, Rob and I had a special bond. I mean, like, yeah, we got injured around the same time. And actually at one of these athlete summits in November, was like, I remember Rob was like out walking. He wasn't running yet, but he was like, walking and hiking, and he went on his like longest hike. And like literally when I went to this athlete summit in November, it was like the first time I was actually cleared to walk. So it was like learning to walk again at this athlete summit. And it was like wonderful, and to like be surrounded by people that were, like these awesome athletes and super supportive of their respective injuries. But then also just like Rob and I could kind of like cry on each other's shoulders and be like, this is really hard,
Yeah.
But no, we have this like special bond. It was so cool to be able to go out there and like, actually, he was running again, and he like won Leadville after that his knee surgery. And, I was able to return to competition again. And so it's like, we just have this special, this special bond. That's like, it's like when he's struggling, I could have, we could just call each other up, and like, we didn't really have to say much. We'd just be like, be able to just to relate to one another.
What was it like being at that summit, not being able to run long and far? And I had a similar experience a couple weeks ago. I was out at the Sunto Multisport or Sunto Elite Team camp, and someone was, they're all top level athletes and triathletes and runners, and I was out there running 20 minutes, and someone was like, "Oh, like you go for a run today? Like, what'd you do?" And I was like, "Oh, I did a 20-minute walk run." It was like really like it felt a little defeating that they were out there doing 30-mile races, and I was out there running walking 2.5 miles. So what was that experience like, being around some of your friends and some really high level athletes, not able to do what you like to do?
Yeah, so it was definitely really frustrating, honestly. That was something that like at the beginning of my injuries, like I was feeling pretty isolated, because I was feeling isolated from my community, because like running was my social life, and like running was just something I loved to do, and I got to do it with my friends, and it felt awesome. And then I felt like that was all taken away from me, and my friends were still able to run, and then but I couldn't see them in that capacity anymore, and I felt like I was missing out. So but then, I mean, it was definitely hard, but then I thought to myself, it's like, okay, like, what can I do? I literally like, had my PT routine, and I was doing it like twice a day at this campsite. So I was like trying to do what I could, but then like, my good friends, Rory Bosio on the team, and then Mike Foote, they would join me on my little like walks, and like Rory would let me cry on her shoulder when I was like like frustrated that I could only walk a half mile before my foot was like throbbing and hurting, and like but it was also at that point where I was just like, where people that I didn't even really know that well, but I like looked up to them as athletes, that they came over to me, and they were just like, hey, I've been like like they would send me messages, and like then they'd come over to me at the athlete summit and be like, hey, I've been really thinking of you, like how are you? And they'd like were just genuinely interested. So that was one of the moments where it helped me realize, it's like, okay, like I'm obviously more than a runner. Like who am I? Is like who I am is what really matters, not the fact that I can like do this sport in an extreme way. And so it was actually really encouraging, and it was like a really necessary part of the healing process.
Cool. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the podcast that you host. Where did that come from?
Yeah, so I'm actually a coach with CTS, that's Carmichael Training Systems, and they coach like Chris Carmichael was a cycling coach. But now they've opened it up to like runners and specifically ultra runners. So I am a coach through them. It's like how I use my, my fancy science degrees. But it's also just a passion of mine. Like it's another way of like community for runners. it's a way that I can like give back and like help other people achieve their goals. And it's a really cool thing to share, like being a coach and then like also learning from the people that you coach. It's awesome. And so through that coaching system, or coaching platform, they decided to launch a podcast. And, I think, Chris Carmichael asked me to lead the running side of things. And Adam Pulford is a cycling coach for CTS, and he, leads the cycling portion of it. So it's like half of the episodes are cycling and then half the episodes are running. So we kind of like bounce back and forth, but yeah, it's really fun. It's really interesting. I love it because you get to learn so much, and it's cool. Like that, through a conversation that I have with someone, it's like you can record that, and then the things that I learn, I can then like broadcast them to everyone else, so it's like they can learn it too. But yeah, generally it's on different themes. It's like I want to just talk to interesting people, but then at the end of the day, have it be something where everyone can gain something from it. You're on there with talking about Inside Tracker, so that's a good one. But yeah, just inspiring people in the community.
Cool. Yeah, it's super fun when you get to have these conversations and then share it with others.
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty of it. Let's talk about your science background and your analytical approach and the whole "it depends" that we were talking about on your podcast. So where did your interest in science come from?
Oh gosh, I think it just came from like I was just curious about the world. Like I talk about, wanting to explore the physical limitations, like that's the athletic side of me, but it all stems from the same curiosity point, like deep within me of like who I am, that wants to know why things are the way they are. And both of my parents are scientists. And so I actually went to school a year early because I think my parents were like, get this kid out of the house. Like she's asking too many questions. Like we just need to have her like occupied, like doing school. And so, but that was just me. Like I was just so curious. I always wanted to know how things worked. I had a very analytical mind. I think that's why I like running too, is because like I felt like if I worked towards something like in a step-by-step manner, I could achieve these goals. And that's what drew me to science, because like it's like the scientific method. You design these experiments to answer a certain question, and then you can kind of rule out everything that's wrong before you find the correct answer. But yeah, so like that's like how I started as a scientist. I feel like I was a scientist from like when I was like before I could even walk, because I was just like such a curious kid. In fact, at career day in kindergarten, I dressed up as an entomologist, which is someone who studies bugs. And so basically I was in a lab coat that I got from my mom. I plastered a bunch of bug stickers on it. I brought in my bug collection and then my orange bug net, and I put on some like safety glasses, like for chemistry goggles. Like that was my outfit. And I stood up for career day and I was like, I'm going to get my PhD and be an entomologist. But yeah, so that's where it all started. It ended with me getting my master's in neuroscience. So like a bit of a different turn there, but again, it's like, I mean, I guess it didn't end because I still feel like I'm a scientist because, now instead of answering scientific questions in the lab, I get to answer scientific questions about the human body for coaching. But then also even more interesting to me is asking questions about the human mind and like emotions, not only for myself and like, how the human psyche works, but also for those that I coach.
And what does that look like?
I mean, I think a good coach is someone who, is there for you, not only just to design a training plan, but I think anyone can kind of like guess their way through designing a training plan and like making athletes fit, like physically fit. But to me, a good coach is someone that has your back, and to someone that you can discuss the hard things about life. Like they're like your friend and confidant, and they're your biggest supporter, and they believe in you. And Yeah, I think
sometimes even more than you believe in yourself.
Well, yeah, like my coach was like that. And it's like, exactly. It's like they fostered this belief, like, so that when there's times when you're doubting it, it's fine because they have like a coach has, more of that than you do. So they have like extra to spare for you. I feel like, yeah, a coach is like your biggest like advocate and like a problem solver. And they're like a support system more than anything.
For sure. I think I've told my coach more. The only person I've told more is probably my therapist. So, and it's pretty comparable. So,
yep, I hear you there.
So yeah, totally agree with you on that. What do you wish you knew as a new runner that you know now?
Oh my God. Let's see. The spoiler, I was like, yeah, Hillary, you're going to fall 150 feet off of a cliff, in this many years. Get ready. No, actually, I think it's so surprising. It's like, I don't know. I think what I would have told myself is that like, you're stronger than you give yourself credit for. Not like, and like, not physically. Like, I think I would have told myself that. And then like, strength is not what you think it is. Like, strength is not physical. It's like emotional. And it's in those moments where you want to give up, but you find a way to keep going, even if it's not pretty. And even if it means that you have to ask for help.
I love that. And what are some of the ways that you've leaned on others for help? I know you've talked about with friends and training partners. Are there other ways that you recommend runners ask for help?
Yeah, I mean, that like, be honest, like that it's not always easy, that or like runs are not always like rainbows and unicorns and butterflies. Like they are like running, like it's raw. It takes a lot of hard work. And I think the more like honest we are about this with one another, but also like with yourself, like that's where the magic happens. It's not that it's easy that, things are beautiful. It's that things are hard and worth fighting for that make things like more special and more beautiful in the end.
For sure. What are you scared of?
Just drop that in there. Geez. Honestly, what am I scared of? The thing that I'm scared of the most is, like falling short of expectations. And that's not expectations of like anyone. It's expectations of like myself. Like I want to be the best person that I am. And I want to like squeeze every last drop out of life. So my fear would be that there's one more drop in there to squeeze out and I won't be able to squeeze it out.
I love that. I like asking this question, and often the response is, bugs or snakes. And I knew that wouldn't be the case for you. Since you love them.
Yeah, I know. I go like deep. Wow. I thought like, what are you scared of? I like immediately go deep. No, and I'm actually not scared of spiders. Like they're fine. There was one in my cabin and I rescued it. It was, yeah.
What do you wish people knew about you besides the fact that you love bugs? Although that's public knowledge at this point.
I think that's public knowledge. If anyone follows me on Instagram, they're like, why is she posting another thing on her thing about bugs? Like, what in the world? One thing, what do I think people should know about me? I don't know. I'm like, I think they know that I'm like a big science nerd, but maybe that I'm more awkward and an introvert than people think.
I had someone else answer that I'm not as mean as I look.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
That was my favorite answer on that one so far.
I'm not as mean as I look. I don't even know how how about this one? As like much of like, this is something I think that people should know is like, I'm a big softie on the inside. Like I might have this like hard exterior and that like, I'm, all happy-go-lucky and optimistic. Yes, that is me, but I'm also just like, I'm a sensitive little person on the inside.
You and Dylan Bowman.
Oh my God, adrenaline. Yep.
Cool. Well, Hillary, thanks so much for chatting today. Where can we follow you if we want to follow along with your adventures and see all the bugs that you find?
Yeah, and learn something about science. So my Instagram, I mean, it's Hillary Allen, but it's Hilly Goat Climbs. That's me. And then I also have a website, HillaryAllen.com, and I have my blog there, and a bunch of other little goodies. I'm actually having a book that's being published this summer, so it's coming out. It's called Out and Back. So yeah, there's all that stuff kind of goes through my website. So HillaryAllen.com is a good place to start.
Cool. Thanks so much, and we'll see you out there.
Thank you.
That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next week on For the Long Run. And in the meantime, happy trails. If you've enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too.